drink and anything you want. Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 231. And I'm happy to say we have a special guest this evening. But as always, I am going to start us off with a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need. To wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wall. Your new gods sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made vain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heathen folly? Bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, no tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall wail gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy ungrudged praise. Come down to search your manhood through all of thankless years. No age with dear bought wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden through all of thankless years.
And that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard with The White Man's Burden. Great song. Do go and check out Chris Gard's excellent YouTube channel. He is one of us guys, and his channel deserves supporting because he's a muso who is not an awful lefty, which is most unusual. I'm happy to say we have a special guest this evening. How are you going, Mr. Morgoth?
Well, I'm doing fine. Thanks. Nice to be back on again, Juki.
You're always welcome, mate. You're always welcome. Of course, you're even more famous now than you were the last time you were on here.
Yeah, infamous.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't go that far, but thanks to a British government-funded extreme left-wing organisation. But yeah,
word around the campfire is it's not going too well for them these days. So I'm hoping to do what I can to exacerbate any problems they're having. There was a great article written by the restorationists, a huge kind of analysis of what they've been up to and all of the shady shenanigans they're doing. It's very sort of legalistic the way they've written it, asking how is this possible, what are they up to, how do they get away with this. So I would thoroughly check out the Restorationist. They're on Twitter and he's got a site as well. I think there's a few of them, but it's nice to see people now enter our kind of circles, if you like, who are clued up on law and who are very well educated and know what they're doing. So it's a far cry from the old days, but nice to see.
Yeah, no, it's excellent. It really is. I mean, I don't think any sensible person has taken much notice of hope, not hate, for a long time. But yeah.
Well, you say that. Reform, well, UKIP and Reform, Nigel was using them to do the vetting.
Yes,
they were taking note of them.
Yeah, absolutely. But as usual, Farage and the Reform leadership are like 5 steps behind the sensible British public. That's the thing I find amusing, is they're always 5 steps behind the sensible British public, you know. I know that Morgoth gave some publicity to Restore Britain when it was first launched by Rupert Lowe, and so did I in my little small way. And I joined. I paid them 20 quid. And I think they're our best bet at the moment. I don't know what you think, Morgoth, Hitman, Tharium, etc.
Well, I'm quite excited about it. I mean, what I was saying about the Restorationist, and you've got these well-suited, very well-spoken, sort of highly educated men. It seems to me there's a similar group around Rupert Lowe as well. Charlie Downs is there. And I think, he's a great young lad. And it just seems that we're getting this very high quality young lads coming up now. And you know, they've kind of grown up on the internet. They've been listening to the streams. They've had a thorough, good education, I think. But I think, you know, all that content over the years, it wasn't just to pass the time. We were educating ourselves and trying to educate the audience and everything. And I like to think that we've had a bit of an impact to the degree that now we've got people who are ready to sort of enter institutions and do this kind of thing. And I think Restore Britain, Rupert Lowe is superb, of course. Can't fault him. I think he's great. And it seems wonderful how this actually gets applied, how that sort of intersects with power itself and what leverage they can bring. We'll have to see, but I think it's a nice change. It's an institution that we're creating, which is what we've longed for a long time. So there's just not really, I don't see any negatives about it whatsoever.
Yep, I tend to agree. Speaking of excellent young men, I hope that Mitch is going to join us this evening, my friend, who's certainly a young chap. I've sent him a link. But yeah, I just to tell people before we started, I started 2 minutes late. And the reason I started 2 minutes late is that we were talking dogs, by the way, which to me is like a typical British thing to do, because Britain is a nation of dog lovers, despite what some immigrants in Britain may say. So yeah, that's why we were 2 minutes late. We were having a chat about dogs. So yeah. Morgoth, did you have a first subject you wanted to speak about this evening, as you're the special guest?
I think I'll hit the Afghan situation, the Afghan data breach, which is just as I said once to many people who follow news, it really boiled my piss. I'll put it that way. I mean, do you want to sort of introduce what happened? Because we were talking before we went on, you seem to be even like a bit more clued up, a bit more of a military man.
Over the 20 years, roughly, that Britain was in Afghanistan, Britain never had more than a brigade group there. Now, a brigade group is 2 to 3 battalions. There was also a Royal Marine battalion size group there. But that is each battalion size unit is about 600, maybe 700 men. How many bloody interpreters did we have? Or, as I said on my Discord, is this a case of everyone who ever took a British bribe plus their second cousin twice removed? Because I don't know how you come up with 25,000 people, to be honest, when, generally speaking, there weren't more than 3,000 British troops in Afghanistan. And quite a lot of those guys never moved outside their base. And girls, I should add. But anyway, but it turns out it's not 25,000 Afghans, it's 216,000 Afghans, which is actually vastly more than the entire British Armed Forces. Like the entire British Armed Forces, which is to say the Royal Navy, the Royal Marines, the British Army, and the RAF. That's about it's just over 180,000 men and far too many women. But we're inviting in 218,000 Afghans because most of them are bringing 8 dependents with them. And all of this is being paid for by the British taxpayer, who was, of course, already paying their salary when they were in Afghanistan, or the bribes they may or may not have accepted, etc. That's the background, Morgoth. I mean, I'm sure I'm not going to disagree with anything you say here.
And then the Tory government at the time, who are sort of instigated, it's fair that Labour carried it on, but they did end it. And the reason why we know anything about it is because of Labour. So we have, once again, to put a super injunction on it, so nobody would be able to talk about it. But then, so we just knew nothing. But then there was certain selected media outlets, the Daily Mail, I think the Telegraph, and the news agents podcast. There may have been 1 or 2 others. And I think they were sniffing around the story. It actually did break, and then it just got hushed up and sort of fell out of the news cycle. But they were told not only were they not allowed to talk about it, they weren't allowed to talk about the fact they weren't allowed to talk about it. So it was just like a kind of double hit of censorship, if that's what you want to call it. The first time the British government ever did it. Rumour has it that Rishi Sunak called the election. Remember when he came out and he was standing in the rain?
Yes,
like sort of Mowgli during like in the Jungle Book or something, and it was like when
it was a pathetic sight.
It was really just pathetic, wasn't it? And he rumor has it that he called the election when he found out the super injunction wouldn't stay. So it seems like I just can't describe how much I hate the Tories. So it seems like they just wanted to cover it up forever. So the British, because it didn't come out until Labour came in, and even then they've been in for a year. So it was like the Tories shat themselves because their dirty little secret was going to get out. And one of the things that makes it worse, and this is where I think you might have something to say on this, Andrew. And this is why it's more of a Tory thing than a Labour thing. And it's because people like Grant Shapps, who isn't a native, but he kind of copies the language, and people like Ben Wallace and these Tory types, they do this thing where they're kind of coding their language in the kind of sort of British militarism, that we are engaged in wars abroad to protect you, and it's none of your business, and it's above you, and you don't have to worry your pretty little head about it. And there's certain ways that you can talk about this, and carry yourself as if you've just stepped back, or you've just arrived back from the Falklands Islands or something, that you're engaged in real British militarism, which to a degree they are, and they're in those institutions, but it's the way they kind of cynically adopt this kind of language. So what you have is where we have to be loyal, like we right wingers, we right wing Tory traditionalists who are steeped in the mythology of the British military and military history of the British Isles. We know what loyalty to our allies is, and we are going to make sure, like, we leave no man behind. And they're coding it all in this kind of jingo, this kind of bollocks, when what they've really done is just stab their own nation in the back. And remember when there was that thing with the Gurkhas where Joanna Lumley wasn't happy about the Gurkhas were being treated? I think they got left behind in India, they were living in poverty or whatever, and she did this campaign where she wanted to bring Gurkhas over to England and settle them on a pension in Brighton or wherever. And it was this big kind of thing where, well, we have a kind of loyalty. We have a duties to protect those people who've served on behalf of the British forces. And this is what they're drawing on. Like, this is what the Tories are leaning into. This kind of, well, we're just so solid. You'll never find a better set of allies than the British military. And it's all bollocks. It's all rubbish. I mean, even their own the court justice, the High Court, the reason why it all got repealed was because it's kind of bullshit. Like, they weren't really in much danger, according to that. The Taliban didn't seem very interested in it. There was too many people. Most people in Afghanistan, it's not like they're living in China or Britain where it's this surveillance state. Like, they weren't going to like hunt them down with drones and put their name. Most of them only have one name. They don't have paperwork. And so it was all just lies. But it's the way, again, like, even in this sort of thing, that the Tories have lent into a kind of right-wing sentiment, which I can understand, but then just totally bastardized it and kind of shat on it and made a mockery of it. Because I can understand an argument that says we've got a battalion of, like in World War II, we've got these Polish fellas. They've come over here. They're flying Spitfires and whatnot for the Royal Air Force. Okay, fair enough. I understand that. But what it is that they've lent into that and touched on those kind of member berries, culturally speaking. But then to just sort of piss in our face and to carry out this big con trick on us for what is, in the end, just another kind of plank in the Great Replacement. Just more lies. And it even begs, I mean, I'll shut up in a moment, but it even begs a question of what they think Britain is that they're defending, because it isn't the home front. They don't give a shit about the home front. But I'll leave it there and let somebody else get a word in, because I could go on all night about it.
Yeah, you make some very interesting points, Morgoth, and I will pass this over to our fellow guests in a minute. But I would just say this. Britain has eternal interests. We don't have eternal allies. That was said in the 19th century when Britain was a much more realistic country than it is in 2025. It's also been said correctly, I believe, that if Britain was really worried about these people, it would have been perfectly possible for Britain to resettle them in countries with similar social systems to their own, much closer to Afghanistan than bringing them over to Britain. As I said at the beginning, Britain never had more than a brigade group in Afghanistan, which is, 3 lots of 600 blokes plus some support staff. How did we end up with 25,000 who needed to come over here? Plus 8 dependents for every single one of them, or most of them. And on top of that, it was the Ministry of Defense, apparently, which did the leak in the first place, which sounds deeply suspicious to me.
Yeah. Do you believe that? Like,
Hang on one second.
Sorry.
Harry. I just say, in terms of the Gurkhas, which Morgoth mentioned, like, my view of the Gurkhas was like a Gurkha who had served for at least 12 years in the British Army should probably be allowed to settle in Britain. The Gurkhas have no great problem settling in Britain, and they're good chaps. You're never going to find a British serviceman who does not like the Gurkhas. I got into trouble with that by certain people who support reform, and Nigel Farage, who Tharium knows quite well, for saying that. But, you know, that's 12 years service, and you're talking about 2.5 Gurkha battalions. So you're talking about, I don't know, 50 guys a year, not 25,000 or 216,000, you know. And the vast majority of Gurkhas will never settle in Britain because their British military pension makes them quite rich in Nepal. It certainly doesn't in Britain. So most Gurkhas are never going to settle in Britain. Why would you? Because you can be a rich man in your home country rather than being a relatively poor dude in Britain. But if a few of them want to, I don't care. But this is very much different with the Afghan interpreters. And as I said at the beginning, I strongly suspect this is not just Afghan interpreters. It's anyone who ever took a British bribe and their second cousin twice removed. Hitman, Tharium, take it away, guys.
The other thing about Gurkhas, the other thing about Gurkhas is I've never heard of them doing bakabazi on British Army bases. So, yeah, they've got that going for them.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, bakabazi, which quite a lot of British soldiers complained about during the Afghan war, is little 12, 13 and 14-year-old boys being turned into I'm trying to
Sodomites.
Yeah, they're turned into sodomites against their will by rich and powerful Afghans. Yeah, that's correct, Hitman. Thank you.
Yeah, and my opinion on like the Afghan interpreters, we sort of say, oh, they're fighting for us and stuff, but our only obligation to them was we offered them a job, we paid them for that job. That's it. I don't think, you know, permanent settlement in Britain was ever on the cards, was it? I don't remember any of that. So I don't see, like, people say we have an obligation to them. I just don't agree at all. Because we did
here's
the
the
job.
thing.
Well, we paid them, I mean.
Well, here's an idea. These men we're supposed to bribe or hide in Afghanistan, they're effectively mercenaries, and they're mercenaries are soldier for hire. And, you know, all you should expect as a mercenary is, okay, we'll pay you for your services, but that's it. You know, this is something nations and empires have done throughout history. I mean, you know, famous example, you know, you had, you know, the Carthage versus Rome, you know, the Carthaginians heavily relied on mercenaries, you know, Spaniards and, you know, Balearic slingers and Greeks and Gauls and whatnot. And, you know, imagine if after all his campaigns, Hannibal said, all right, I suppose we're going to have to settle all you Gauls in like in around Carthage now. I don't think the Carthaginians have been very happy about that.
Yeah, I did a meme on Twitter the other day of Lawrence of Arabia with General Allenby, where Lawrence, you know, I posted the picture and that's had Lawrence saying to General Allenby, oh, we lost the battle. Now we're going to have to settle the entire Arab army in Chichester to keep them safe. And Allenby, like, I had him just saying, have you gone stark raving mad? Because nobody, like in the past, the British military, the British political class would have just found it preposterous that you're up to your usual shenanigans far away, and then if the battle goes bad for you, you don't pull it off. You just rehouse an entire third world army in England, for Christ's sake. It's insane.
It's insanity. It is insanity. But the things were so bad in Afghanistan that when Britain finally withdrew after 20 years of getting our guys killed and maimed and wounded for absolutely nothing in Afghanistan, like we gained nothing whatsoever. After 20 years of that, we had to bring our war memorial of all the dead and guys back to the UK because the Afghans would have destroyed it. So, you know, I must disagree with the mushroom who says the country is spent. No, we're not done, mate. And I also must disagree with Gawat of Rivia, who says the Gurkhas would be the first troops set on the British population if there was ever a boogaloo. I don't think so. And even if they were, there's like 3 battalions of Gurkhas. I mean, so what, really? You know, that's nonsense. And also, I think the Gurkhas and their British officers are actually some of the better British Army troops, to be honest with you. They're more traditional than many of the senior officers in the British Armed Forces these days, I've got to tell you. But yeah, I totally agree with what Morgoth is saying about this. It's the thing that some people are saying about, oh no, we must be loyal to these British collaborators and what have you. That's bullshit. They're trying to play on your good British feelings of loyalty, and it's crap, frankly.
Yeah, it's just a cynical lie. And I'm not loyal to Afghanistan. I'm sorry, I'm not loyal to Afghanistan. I've got no loyalty to any soldiers in Afghanistan except our own, of course. What, like the Afghanis themselves? I don't care. I don't even think we should have been there in the first place. I think, and especially, I mean,
Totally.
if you say we go in after 9/11, all right. But what are we still doing there in like 2019, 2020? It just seems just ridiculous. Nobody, like, this is the thing, right? The British state gets up to all kinds of dirty shit all over the world that we have no say in. We are never asked our opinion on it. And you know, internationally as well, we're on the hook for a lot of things historically that we've never had any say in. But in this case, in theory, what they're doing is out there fighting wars far away. If they actually represent the nation of Britain, let's say, they represent, in the end, they are representative of the native population of the British Isles, United Kingdom. And in order to safeguard us, which is what they're for, in theory, they have to go off and they have to do things all over the place. I mean, I find that a bit of a stretch. But all right, whatever. When it comes to somewhere like Afghanistan, but then it's like all of a sudden, when you can just import wholesale like 200,000 of these people from far away, you're no longer defending the home front. You're no longer you're not even just detached to a degree where, if you think back to in the days of the Empire, the home front would at least be kind of sacred in a way. There may be some dirty things go on in Africa or India or this kind of thing for the greater good of the empire, but it didn't affect John Bull sitting back in the Cotswolds with his pint. The home front and England was this land of bucolic bliss that had to stay that way. And in the end, all of this would be justified because you are safeguarding that way of life. That does not happen. That when you import 250,000 people from Afghanistan, on top, let's just not forget, the same government was doing the Boris wave. You're no longer doing that. You're no longer safeguarding the home front. You're destroying it. You're abolishing it. You're abolishing and making extinct what actually really matters and what's supposed to underpin the entire political apparatus and the military as well. So what you end up with is something detached from place and it becomes a kind of entity unto itself, which just kind of stomps around the world doing shady shenanigans for reasons which are just incomprehensible to us. And even then, as I say, in the past, that might be one thing if it didn't affect us at home. We turned over the centuries, we've turned a blind eye to a lot of things because it didn't affect us back home, but now it does. So now I wrote an article this week about it. I was walking my dog a few years ago in some fields next to Blythe in the northeast, and on the coastline, and I just saw all of these like sort of heavy duty RAF cargo planes coming in like a convoy, one after another, with what seemed to be like the bare minimum of distance between them. As soon as one was heading towards Newcastle Airport, there was another one on the way, and everything like that. And I was just standing looking up at it, thinking, what is all of this about? And I didn't know. I'd never been informed. So a while after that, like that weekend, I met up with a mate, and he mentioned a place where there's the Ministry of Defence has housing. It's kind of like council housing, but it's for people in the military.
Mhm.
It's kind of, they've got a carve out of so many houses across the country. And he mentioned this place in Northeast, and he was saying it's just being crammed full of foreigners. He says, I don't know where they're from, but there's families going in there, there's single men going in there, and all of it is the housing that used to be sort of earmarked for servicemen.
Well, I've heard that they've actually were kicking servicemen out of homes in there, not just like they had some spare ones, but it's actually removing veterans in favor of all these Afghans.
Listen, Morgoth, Tharium, how many British military veterans can you find homeless and begging on the streets of Britain? Huge numbers in every major city. You can see it. You can see a guy who'll say, "Oh yeah, served in Afghanistan" or whatever. And all right, some of them are probably lying, but you know what? Most of them are not. And why on earth should you have homeless British servicemen, and yet you're giving everything, not only to the Afghans, but also to everyone who comes across the channel on a small boat? It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's the wider context as well. And you get to the point where it's kind of like, as I was saying about like, what is the core? The core of it has to be a homeland. All of these things, if you do something abroad, if you take the sort of the justification for going into Afghanistan was out to get Bin Laden and Al Qaeda. It was after 9/11, all the rest of it. So the justification was, I think America invoked like the article, whatever.
Why didn't we leave then, Morgoth? Okay, I get that, but after you knock out the Taliban, and I was totally in favor of the British Special Forces, like the SAS and the SBS, going in there and helping the Americans to get rid of those people in 2003. I was totally in favor of that. But then why didn't we leave?
Yeah.
It's there was a famous time where it's like 2003 where we were saying to the Americans, okay, why don't we bring back the Afghan monarchy to try and stabilize the place? And Hillary Clinton famously said, we don't deal with monarchies. So the one thing that could have stabilized the place, or at least keep it beneath, keep the lid closed, the Americans just famously veto with someone like Hillary Clinton. And it's I must have been and this is one thing that people don't know about the Taliban, was because Taliban literally means students, because they were young lads at the time the Soviets invaded. By the time they got into adulthood and went back to Pakistan, back to Afghanistan from their Pakistani madrasas, they were disgusted by this Bachabazi stuff, and that's literally why entire regions of Afghanistan just defected to the Taliban in the 90s during the Afghan civil war, because it's literally just, these guys hate the pedos and we want the pedos gone.
And let's also remember that the CIA and MI6, the British equivalent of the CIA, backed the Taliban when they were fighting the Soviets.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I got a book by a guy called Roger Braithwaite, who was our ambassador to the Soviet Union in the time of Gorbachev. One thing he says is so all the Stinger missiles and all the military hardware that America, especially that Charlie Wilson, I think his name was from Texas.
That's the guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's screwed off of that neck of the woods, because literally you have a position where no government is actually stable in Afghanistan, because there's so many guns in Afghanistan that no state apparatus aside from the Taliban can actually install any order, because literally every man and a goat has a gun at this point. And
it's always been that way, Mitch.
Yeah.
Afghanistan was like that in the 19th century.
Yeah, but had
you
monarchy.
watch... Sorry, I missed you. Carry on.
I was just to say they had like monarchies or like figures who were able to keep a lid above on the religious extremists, whereas the Americans, in their infinite wisdom, decided to give weapons to the worst fanatics that region could summon, and then they're surprised that it bites them in the arse later on. So,
what was bizarre about the American strategy is that they still adhered to the clan culture. I mean, we still adhered to the clan culture, so we still had like monarchs, but it was like on a purely tribal level, on group level. And if you watch the Adam Curtis documentary, Bitter Lake, it actually talks about how, particularly in Helmand, the reason why the Taliban were able to expand through Helmand outwards into areas which they really didn't have much of a presence, was because you had one tribe would approach the British and say their rival tribe was the Taliban. So we would then bomb them. And then in retaliation, they will say, no, this tribe's... And suddenly we found ourselves completely isolated by all groups, subgroups within Afghanistan, because we ended up just following what rival tribes said. And they basically used us as basically like a quick kill service against their tribal rivals, which had nothing to do with the Taliban, Al Qaeda, or anything like that.
Guys, I'm gonna just say one thing because I'm watching the chat. Is that there were American U.S. Marine guys and Army soldiers, as well as British Army soldiers and Royal Marines, who pointed out to superior officers this nasty, vile, bassy stuff about where little 12-year-old boys were basically turned into sodomites for powerful Afghans. The Americans and British servicemen pointed that out to their superior officers, and they were always ignored or told to shut up.
I'm Duke. There's a Vice documentary, which I think is probably still up on their channel. This is going back, over 10 years now. And they were following around the Afghan National Army. And you had I think it was like American, advisors, basically they're basically just running the unit. And there was this really weird bit where they entered this property. They'll say, well, where's the Afghan National Army officers? And they just went into this house and told them, no, they need to come out. And then there were all these young boys with them. Now, and they knew, everyone knew exactly what was about to happen. And then one young boy was locked in some outhouse that was, he was quite like dehydrated and everything.
And let's be clear about this. These young boys we're talking about here are basically turned into transvestites at like 12 years old.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that is traditional in Afghanistan. It's gone back. British soldiers in the 1830s, in the first Anglo-Afghan War, like the last one was the fourth Anglo-Afghan War, but the British soldiers in the 1830s pointed out what was going on, so it hasn't changed.
You often got a lot of
And
them.
yet
they don't.
we're inviting
Sorry.
these people. I beg your pardon,
Yeah.
Harry. We're inviting these fucking people to come and live in Britain amongst our own children.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention was one thing to bear in mind with Afghanistan also, it's very multi-ethnic. Like, for example, you got Tajiks, from whom you get this Bachabazi practice originate. Meanwhile, the Taliban are largely Pashtun, which basically is also the dominant ethnic group of Pakistan. And essentially, we're just importing basically a lot of people who still think of themselves like, in the same way they would have thought about themselves 2,000 years ago. And you got fact also in areas of Afghanistan where Bachabazi was a thing, where so they determine whether you were willing to consent to your own son being pedorasted upon by, okay, are you willing to let him play outside? So when these Afghans that we've invited over here, when they see, young lads just like playing outside, like a 12-year-old boy playing in a playground, they're just going to perceive that as us consenting to our children being preyed upon.
I mean, it's a fact that if you look at the crime figures, Afghans have one of the highest rates of
The highest.
Thank you, Tharium. The highest rate of sex offences are Afghans.
There's a Turkish historian back in the 80s who actually claimed that the practice Bachibazi dates back to the ancient Hellenistic Bactrian kingdom, the Greek kingdom of the successor state of Alexander's empire.
I can believe that.
I can believe that as well. Unfortunately, as much as I love the Greeks and everything, and the Alexander's empire, I can believe that there was some, some of that filtered through.
But to be fair, by the time you're looking at Alexander's empire being affected by that, it was extremely influenced by the East, shall we say.
I do wonder if it's like a bizarre, because I know you do have like a strong unit culture, and I do wonder if there is like this was like some sort of Tazik Greco sort of like bastardization of that this is where it all comes from.
I don't think it was Greco. I think it was mostly Eastern, but I mean, whatever.
Yeah,
you do see. Sorry, I was going to say you do see people who are engaging it. I've seen them say, "Oh, well, it happened to me when I was a boy, so now it's my turn." It's just a really sick attitude they have to it.
And just to, because we're talking about Oriental empires, but what's interesting with this, bringing in these hundreds of thousands of Afghans, I think ultimately it is to essentially, especially most of these guys being mercenaries, it's to kind of create this hostile occupation army, I think, to control the native population. And just to draw a comparison, when the Arabs first launched their conquest and conquered the Byzantine territories in the Middle East and the Persians, one of the things they did to consolidate their control is they set up all these little garrison towns. So in Iraq, you had Basra, and you also had Kufa, and in Egypt, you had one called Fustat. And so you put like these whole tribes of like Arabs from Arabia in these new conquered lands, and they were done in that, it was organized in that way to pacify and control these newly conquered lands to dominate the natives. And so we seem to be getting a horrific replication of that potentially.
It's interesting that, because there's a theory goes around, which I don't subscribe to it, but I know that it goes around, and you'll see people saying, all of these people coming across in small boats, this is going to be like an occupation army, and then eventually it's all going to go to hell, and then these are like secretly trained troops or something. It's from the United Nations. Are they going to be activated to suppress the native population? It's like a conspiracy theory, and it goes like that. I haven't agreed with it, but Hitman's right. Like in this occasion, they seem to have just imported like an army. Well, although then again, if they're just translators or what, I don't think so. I mean, I don't buy it. I don't buy that Afghan troops are going to sort of suppress the natives or anything. I think they're going to loiter around in shell suits. They're going to get up to petty crime. They're going to touch up English girls as they go to school. They're going to sort of become these kind of degenerates who lounge around just claiming benefits forever, and just be like just an extra load and an extra sort of massive chunk of the demographic replacement, which is ongoing. But I will concede, though, it is like a wholesale importation of people in the tens or hundreds of thousands, or at least in terms of soldiers, 20 to 30,000 who have been in some form of combat or at least involved with the logistics. So it is like a watermark in that way. Like I've pushed back against the theory this is all just some imported army, but yeah, they have actually just done that. Yeah, it is a bit of a next step up from just dismissing that theory out of hand.
I mean, in Afghanistan, green on blue attacks were always a big concern for our troops from their Afghan allies just turning on them, which happened plenty. And you can imagine they're now on their bases home here, and now they've got all these Afghans, the same people who they had to always be wary of, now just living with them here. It's just awful.
Well, I mean, some Bill Parker in the chat says Starmer wishes he was a Carmite.
I think you'll find he is a Catamite.
Yeah, I was just going to say, look, Starmer is a gay guy pretending not to be and pretending he's married. That's the truth. Did you ever see him doing the punching bag video?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, guys,
I've seen women hit harder than that.
Me too. I've been hit by women harder than that. But yeah. It's just nonsense, all right? Starmer is a gay guy who's pretending to be married, and that is the rumor that constantly flows around him, and I'm sure it's true. In the same way that the American dude killed himself, as Trump now tells us.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did. Yeah, sure he did. He managed to jump off this 4-foot high bed and break his neck. Of course he did. I believe you.
Do you think
and all the cameras magically stopped?
Yeah.
When that happened, and people were sick, and yeah, all right.
A couple of guards fell asleep as well.
Yeah,
They were
these things
asleep.
happen. These things happen.
Do you think Starmer is trying to do like a Kevin Spacey and he's saving the gay reveal for some big scandal with him, and he'll
Like
go
a really-
like Kevin
really-
Spacey, yeah,
Really
yeah.
big rainy day sort of thing.
Yeah. Actually, guys, I'm gay.
I think
and just
Starmer
distract
is a
them.
worse politician than that American actor is an actor, but that's all I'll say.
Is that? Oh, I'm so sorry for inviting all these Afghans in, but just so you know, I'm gay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I should have mentioned that earlier, but hey, yeah, there it is.
I see Melon, who is a friend of some people on this stream, saying that Sargon's power is growing in leaps and bounds. I like Sargon, but you know what? He still hasn't lost that lefty liberal bit that makes me not entirely trust him.
One thing that's really dark, that I find quite dark about this whole Afghan thing, and this is something that always plays on my mind, is how the more that this goes on, the Tommy Robinson crowd, the Constantine Kitchen crowd, Matt Goodwin, all those people that sort of grift on the small boats, but also that just the demographic stuff without even explicitly being, they have this veneer that they're concerned about it, they want something to change about that, but in reality they actually don't, and it's about, for them it's just some sort of about some sort of convoluted idea of Britishness that's never ever explained.
Do you ever see Israel like relocating all the people from the Islamic State who were working for them into Israel. You don't really, do you?
No, I have been told by reliable source, Greek person this week, that there is a organization called Israel Aid, and they are partly funded, or they're funded by the Israeli state, and they have been helping refugees into Greece and into the Falklands.
As you would if you were an Israeli. Yeah, look, you know what? I'm not particularly anti-Israeli. Like in terms of Israel and Palestine killing each other, go for it, boys. I don't really care. They're not British. I don't care. I don't. You can tell me that I should care about women and kids and all the rest of it. Nah, not my problem. I'm an Englishman and a British guy, and I do not care what happens in the Middle East for the most part, so long as British ships, merchant ships, can go to and fro. That's all I give a shit about, frankly. But yeah, it's funny because you get Stephen Yaxley Lennon. Tommy Robinson. I don't think Tommy Robinson should be constantly locked in prison. I really don't. But I really hate the fact that every time his people do a demo, there are gigantic Israeli flags over the top of Union flags, British Union Jack flags. I don't like that.
I mean, the only positive thing...
Maybe he should stop.
The only positive thing, Andrew, was with the Epping events recently. I do not believe, I have not seen
I
evidence.
don't think they were Tommy Robinson.
No, they weren't. That was my point. They weren't, and also they weren't that that UKIP Christian nationalist nutter that goes around with the modern UKIP.
Tim Concanti or whatever.
Yeah, some Italian twat.
Name,
yeah, some Italian twat. Yeah. He goes around with his Judeo-Christian bollocks. Fighting lefties, all that sort of stuff. I mean, yeah, those people weren't present, and I think that's one of the reasons why the police escorted the stand up to racism lot back, because it was like, oh, they were hoping that Tommy Robinson's lot will turn up and they'll do the political dance, the political street dance of my side shouts, your side shouts, yada yada yada. Actually, this was like a real mob, and this is something I think was with Epping. It was actually real. A lot of these demos that you see between Tommy Robinson's lot and the stand up to racism people, I mean, they're just both the state. They are fundamentally just both the state. Different forms of the state.
Different states, yeah.
Different forms of the state with different state backings, doing different, but working to the same ends. But this one was just genuinely angry locals and angry parents.
Yeah, I think Cassandra gets this right. In Epping, it was really concerned parents.
And
let's remember, the people in Epping are the former East Enders of London who moved out. And where else are they going to go after they've gone to Epping?
Yeah, that was my impression. It was just normal people who can't take it anymore. There's just no way out. You can go back and you can see they were trying to vote their way out of it when they were being deluged and when they were in London, the old Cockney Stand and Barking and Dagenham. There was a famous episode of the BNB. And then so they weren't listened to. They didn't get their way. They were just overrun with immigrants against their will. So they move out. They move towards Essex. They move towards Epping. And it's just like it never ends. Wherever they go, they're just deluged. And it gets to the point where you're quite literally at the end of the line. There's nowhere left to go. There's nowhere left to run. And now you've got, against your will, there was a hotel given over to house migrants off the boat, and they end up. An Ethiopian is alleged to have touched up a 14-year-old girl and made tried it on with that, or worse than that, and they're just at their wits' end. I think the Southport stuff last year was similar.
Mhm.
I don't expect what people are supposed to. Like, what is it they think people are going to tolerate before they just like we can't live like this.
I heard I saw it on Facebook. It was going around on that it was actually a 7-year-old girl, and also I don't know the actual age, but it may have been 14. But
It's probably
one
both.
thing, I mean, could be at this point. But one thing that did stand out was, and I think the reason why the police panicked and retreated in the way that they did was they actually realised, oh, hold on a second, this isn't like an AstroTurf thing. This is real. This is real anger, and that's why you had this very sort of like fearful retreat and reaction. That this was
AI. The cops even ran over people in their vans.
Mhm.
yeah. They straight up there
is a big contrast between British white cops kneeling to Black Lives Matter, as the English football team does constantly, and the Scottish football team sometimes. They kneel to Black Lives Matter. But if you're a patriotic guy with a St. George's flag in your hand and you're trying to protect your daughter, the British cops will run you over.
Well, again, the way the police, when they've ever, and probably those officers there, whenever they've dealt with white English people in like a public order thing, it's probably either been football or some AstroTurf right-wing rally in London or something like that when they've been pulled in from like Essex or something like that. But as Morgoth has said, and people in chat have said, and I've said, these were ordinary people. These weren't like your typical yobbos that like to have a fight with the cops. These were people who were so viscerally angry, it were actually turned into, I mean, it was steps away from being a full-on, rebellious mob. I don't think I don't think it's too sort of a hyperbolic statement to make, because I think that there was some organisation. I know that there was some organisation on the ground with I think Homeland Party were there, so there was some people. There were figures there who were present on the ground, but for whatever reason, you've had like the MPs come out.
AI. There
Yeah.
is such a thing as OPSEC, all right? There is.
I mean, I think what you're saying about it's not just yobbos. There's a lot of women there, and women don't turn out for stuff unless they're really angry. I'm not counting like the hope not hate idiots and stuff, but
yeah,
any sort of like
you're right, Farage. I mean,
any sort of like right
when women turn out, they're trying to help their daughters and stuff like that.
It's not football hooligans then when women are involved.
What are they going to do? Like, because I know this isn't like me going, oh yeah, this is like we're gonna have a revolution. I don't think we're anywhere near it. But if you have this level of civil disobedience across the country regularly, you're gonna have I don't know who'd say it today, but it's kind of like the Soviet Union on its its tipping point, where basically the system just collapses because nobody believes in it, because everyone knew it was a lie, but the actual pin that kept it all together has just come crashing down.
Because this was kind of what was happening in the later days under Gorbachev. After Chernobyl, the authority of the state just dissipated. Like, no one really believed in. You had cities where gangs just formed up. In areas like Armenia and Azerbaijan, you had ethnic conflict just springing up. No one really believed in the state anymore, and it was just a matter of the only reason it didn't fall apart straight away was because there wasn't really a united authority to take over until you have someone like Yeltsin later on. But even then, Yeltsin, Yeltsin didn't turn out to be a good answer. But that's the state of play we've got. Is basically we've got the country being a massive powder keg, and the best thing we've got in terms of anyone willing to replace the current crop of elites are reform.
I think
who won't replace anything. Like, I'm sorry, so long as Zia Yusuf dominates reform as he does at the moment, reform aren't going to replace anybody. All reform are going to do is become the new so-called, in air quotes, conservative party. Indeed, they're importing many of these people as we speak. It's containment, as Gone in the chat says. My opinion is, and I never used to think this, but I've just watched what's gone on over the last 7 or 8 months, and I think Nigel Farage and Reform are just containment. Morgoth.
Oh, I was just going to say as well, on this sort of trend that we're seeing more and more, it was also, we saw it in Northern Ireland, where there was somewhere else in England, I think in Hull, I saw there was a protest out. And I think what's happening, if you just take Epping, how is it that kind of normies are going out on the streets in an organized manner? And you can tell it's normies because they don't have a wider ideological anchor, whether that's sort of we hate Muslims and we love Israel, Tommy Todd stuff, or whether it's something sort of rooted more in the overall demographics of the country, that kind of thing. They don't have that. They don't have this. They don't have this kind of thing fleshed out. And I think what it is, if we use Epping as an example, is that we're getting, because of the way social media works, into a kind of post-institutional or post-organizational sort of form of activism. So in the case of Epping, I would say you've got these migrants being placed in this hotel. There's a school just around the corner. And quickly you begin to have something like concerned parents of Epping, WhatsApp group. And you then find that there's maybe 2 or 3 people going in, but more people become concerned. Evela's Sunglasses said in the chat, he's got family there. They've said this has been building up for a while. So eventually you've got a local sort of WhatsApp or Facebook group with the concerned parents of Epping in, and they're gossiping amongst themselves. They're huddling together and they're talking about what's going on, all the little infractions, all the irritations of these migrants. And then there you get the situation where there's actually a girl attacked, or what went on there. And all of a sudden you've now got a Facebook page or a WhatsApp group with 200 or 300 people in, or maybe 50 people, but then they're also in other chats. And so what you've got is a kind of emergent network, which begins around one issue, which is concerned parents of Epping because of the asylum hotel situation. And when something actually happens, they're able to go out on the streets. They've got placards ready and all of the rest of it. I kind of know this because of something very boring that I was in when some years ago, when there was some people pushing back against a planning application for something, and I was invited into this group on Facebook where all ever people did was moan about what was being done with this planning application and what was going to be built on the local field and all of this kind of thing. And I think there's something like that happening, but it'll be happening everywhere. And you can imagine there's these hotels are going on all over the country. And so the concerned parents of Epping, I mean, this is just speculation. I've got no inside information on any of this. That will lead to, and I think it already has led to, where you get these sort of spontaneous emergent protests where people who kind of know each other and trust each other are able to come together like that. which is actually welcome to see, because in the old days, it would be men down the pub doing that. And then everybody became atomized, the pubs closed, and people stopped going out and all the rest of it. And then you get this like long sort of dark age where everybody just seems to sit cowering in their homes. And it could be that we're kind of passing through that because the situation is just so terrible. That's one sort of view I would have on why we're beginning to see these people who are normies, but they're organized, and it's pleasant to see. But I think we're going to see a lot more of it.
Edward Dutton sort of referred to it as like a self-correcting, self-consciousness system within the British people as a group. So collectively, as a group, all of us on like a subconscious level are actually like basically noticing. We're all seeing the same thing at once, and it's all becoming very apparent. And that's why you have like, I mean, one example maybe is that if you look at the breakdown in Yugoslavia, with the Croats and the Slovenians being the first sort of breakaway, while there was a lot of help external particularly within communities on the borders and such, you actually had like this massive form of collective effort within their own sort of like ethnic groups that allowed these sorts of breakdown to happen.
Yeah, and it's also, I think like Bosnia was the worst case where you had, because a lot of intermarriage among like different groups. I mean, this is one thing where people, like certain people, on the centre like go, oh well, we can't be like Bosnia because some of our people have intermarried with the foreigners. And it's like, well, Bosnia had exactly that, where you had Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs marrying one another. But when when ethnic conflict starts to break, everyone goes to their team. Like even if you got families intermarried, doesn't matter. That doesn't trump your own ethnic self-interest.
One of the things I thought was interesting, you're saying about how it is just normies. I've seen a lot of them say it's not about race. It's like, so you are noticing, like they're sort of still got the normie programming, but they're noticing that actually, like, because otherwise, why would you say it's not about race? So they are noticing that difference.
Tharium, I'll come back to you in a sec, but Hitman, what do you reckon?
Well, as people say, it's already kicking off, and something I've seen sentiment going around is that after Southport, is almost like at any moment something like that could happen again, and there's also this idea of, okay, technically, the state, yes, they arrested a load of people over Southport, but the thing is, there's only so much resources they can throw at unrest, and that if it really goes on for long enough, they may not be able to take pacifying it anymore.
Yeah,
I have seen
perfectly reasonable.
I've seen some people.
Because you're former Reform supporter and a Nigel Farage supporter, and so was I, by the way. How is he missing this bus?
It's I don't think it's his interest. I mean I think he said himself the other day, oh, the demographic change of the country is something doesn't bother him. He's never fought against, and I believe him on that.
Which means I'll never support him, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway,
I will state publicly to anyone, if a journalist is watching this, I condemn the liking by Zia Yusuf disgusting, unacceptable, anti-Semitic and racist remarks. It's and the reason I don't support Zia Yusuf is because he is just an absolute disgusting anti-Semite, and we should all condemn him for his anti-Semitism.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only reason I don't like the Sri Lankan Muslim Zia Yusuf, is because he doesn't love the state of Israel, and
he doesn't love the Judeo-Christian values.
No.
Yeah, Judeo-Christian. Like, we weren't Christian, we were Judeo.
Yeah. And Harrion, if you're ever watching this, what happened to never again, Harrion? Never again.
Oh,
Should mean something.
Harrion gets bullied by his girlfriend, for God's sake. If a man gets bullied by his girlfriend, that's all you need to know about him, really. You know?
Yeah, I was.
But
I was saying beforehand, I think Zaya is now the one in charge of the party of reform.
well, yeah, for 200,000 quid, which ain't a lot of money to take over
but-
a major political party.
But before, like Nigel was still part, but now Zaya seems to be the most vocal, the most noisiest one there by far, and especially because when he came back after he quit, he said he was going to be taking
Very
more of a
brief quit.
yeah. He said he was going to be taking more of a background role and stuff, and it's been the complete opposite.
Yeah, but what thing I haven't really followed it, except to say, well, so if any reform candidate was to be found like him this week, they'd be turfed out within quick as a flick. But he hasn't been turfed out. I just no one's in reform has commented about it. The closest thing you've got is Suella Braverman's husband quitting, but other than that, there's not they haven't. So yeah, you start thinking. Yeah, so I'm just I got to ask also, how did Zia not read that tweet in question? I mean, I won't repeat.
It wasn't subtle.
How did Zia, who is a mid-30s man, go and report Rupert Lowe to the police, who is a late 60s man, and still claim to be a man? That's what I don't.
To be fair, Duke, you got to factor that the grip strength of the average Indian is lower than the average Polish woman.
Well, he's not an Indian, to be fair. His heritage is Sri
continental
Lanka.
Iron Duke.
No, he's a Sri Lankan, which is even less than most Indians. But yeah, well,
maybe Zia is just genuinely red pilled on the Zog. You know, maybe he's just genuinely red pilled.
he doesn't say a word about that, so far as I know. It's funny, really, isn't it? When you think of it.
I mean, no, more like I mean, there's two things. Either somebody, unless his account was hacked. That's one option. Somebody on his staff is actually working against him, and did that as to bring him down within. Who knows?
Yeah, I've just seen people all over the place, like people who are high up in politics and whatnot. They're all just united in saying no one likes Zia, and everyone. And there's just I've noticed that a lot of people who are. Let's say they might be MPs, or they might be high up in reform, or they might be high up in sort of circles that probably hosted Farage at the height of Brexit. They're all just saying we don't like Zia. So,
Sonny Jim is saying, so did Steve Shives. Now, there's a name from 2014 or 2015. Okay, fair enough.
I'm Duke. I'm just going to head off now. So thanks for having me on.
Many thanks for joining us, AI. And I'll put your links in the description. Go on.
Go well, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Morgoth, listening to all these various things.
I mean, I honestly just have no interest in reform whatsoever. I think it's just a dead duck of a party. My views on Nigel Farage are well known. I think he's a shyster. I think he's a bullshit artist. And I'll tell you why. I mean, I feel like I'm just not excited whatsoever about reform. And here's the thing. What I was saying before about WhatsApp. Imagine, right, you've got all of these little WhatsApp groups all over the country, concerned parents of Epping, which is really a bunch of white people who are terrified about what's happening with the all.
Who've already moved out of the east
Yeah.
end of London.
And
Yeah.
So they are a constituency. They need representation because you've got one there in Epping, but they're everywhere. Some of them aren't organised even on WhatsApp groups. They're out there. There was a game I used to play, a strategy game. One of the Warcraft things, but it was like an RTS, and they had this level in it called the Lions, the Lambs, and the Lost. And it was just because the map was set up in such a way that it was like it's kind of everybody eats everybody, and it was last man standing type thing. But so at the moment, many of our people are in the situation of the Lost, and we want them to be in the situation of the Lions. Now, if they had political representation, you could take that one network at Epping, and then you could connect it to another one further down the road, then another one, another one. And if you looked at the data as they do now, you could easily look at all of the data. I think this is how Dominic Cummings got Brexit. The sort of the mastermind behind the Brexit thing was this strategic voting. What you will find was that there's a gigantic chunk of the population who desperately need political representation. So the question then is, who or what is that, and what does it look like? And unfortunately, we're lumbered with a bullshit artist like Nigel Farage, who has told them explicitly he will not represent them. Now, what I mean by that is when the sort of the rubber hits the road, you are going to have a client group. So Labour has a client group. It's non-whites, it's sort of students, and it's particularly Muslims, Palestine activists, and all of this kind of thing. They've got their own client groups. The Tories don't really. They betrayed theirs, so they are kind of
they're ancient boomers.
Yeah, ancient boomers in the south. That's it. Now, who are Reform's client group? Who are they offering patronage to? Well, it has to be the kind of people that we saw the other day on Epping. In fact, I know it is. In fact, I'm pretty sure they in Epping will be all on board for Reform. They are forming that massive voter base they now have. The problem is Nigel Farage has told them explicitly he will not represent their concern.
Yeah, he's going to betray them.
He's going to betray them. And that's why I just can't stand to get invested or even take any notice of Reform at all. They are being told, it's being signposted now, and it always has been, I am not really there for you. I am not your savior. I don't care how the demographics in your area go. Now, there's a difference here, right? Because if you contrast that with Rupert Lowe, you have to be realistic in a way. You have to code yourself in certain kind of language because you can't, in the current climate, so they say, is that you can't just say, I'm here to represent the white British people. Because you could do that, and I think we're going to get that soon, but that's where we are. But you can signal in a certain way, which gives the impression to the base that you are their champion, even if you can't say so explicitly. This is what Rupert Lowe does. Rupert Lowe is letting them know, I am here on your side, and I'm going to go as far possible to the line and actually quite over it to let you know that in the end, I've got your back. But there's limits on what he can say. We have to operate, we have to be realists. There is limits to what he can say, but he's going pretty bloody far. Farage doesn't do that. Farage does the exact opposite. He is telling them explicitly, don't invest yourselves in me. Because he doesn't want to be put on the spot where he has to choose between one group and the other. Because there's going to be look, it's already happened. And one of the examples where this has already happened in Farage's case and in Richard Tice's case is that when Steve Edgington says, what do you think about the white British as they stand on the census becoming a minority between what is it, like 2050 or 2060? It doesn't matter that much. It's the principle of it. And so what they do is say it has to be, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whatsoever. I'm kind of above that. Colour doesn't concern me. Now, interestingly, I think Matt Goodwin, who people are even more kind of suspicious of, he was like, yeah, it's a disaster and we have to do what we can to, make sure it doesn't happen. I suspect that Rupert Lowe would say something similar. But you see, the point is, when it was time for the rubber to hit the road, there's no way out of that. There is a group of people on the census which stand as white British. Whatever, we can get into the sort of nitty gritty of ethnicity and all the rest of it, and maybe there's some Poles lumped in or what Germans lumped in. Whatever. Let's just park that to one side. The fact is, the principle of what would be in the best interests of the white British, when it came down to it, you can say that should happen or it should not happen. There is no middle ground. There's no wiggle room. And they've told you explicitly, well, I don't care. I do not care. Now, that's just, so yeah, okay, if you don't care, then I'm not interested in what you've got to say. That's it. You are now just indifferent to the concerns of our people. You do not have the right to represent us. We do not have to be your client group if we get nothing back. Because downstream from that is his inability to argue that the demographics in, let's say, Epping shouldn't change anymore. He can't make that argument anymore because he's already kind of negated the original premise of the discussion. So it's useless. It's just dead weight. It's just a damn squib. What you have to do is get behind somebody like Rupert Lowe, who is saying the right things and who has made the right signals.
100% agree with you, Morgoth. I like everything you said there. I think is 100% true. Nigel Farage is a con artist. He is being ruled by Zia Youssef, who is a Muslim of Sri Lankan background. And he only paid 200,000 quid for this. I don't know. Something else must have gone on there, because that's not a lot of money to control a political party. And, Zia Youssef can say, oh, I'm leaving. It's no longer in my interest to support reform. But unlike Rupert Lowe or several other people, he's immediately accepted back into the fold. Charlotte Clossington, who's an American friend of mine, says he might hop on. I'll send you a link in a minute, Clossington. Look, I just think Nigel Farage is a con artist, because they've gone from saying they were going to basically deport all illegal immigrants to well, not really, because we can't really do that. They've also gone from net zero, which is not enough, by the way. Britain is vastly overcrowded. Britain needs more emigration than immigration for at least about a decade. At least. But again, they've gone back on that. They're saying, "Oh no, we're only going to do that for 2 years."
Well, now they've said, actually, we're going to freeze all immigration. It's like, what is it then? If your opposition is jumping around to everything then you can't believe anything you say.
Well, that's the thing, Robbo, isn't it? It's like you've got, because the fact that they've got a Muslim high up in the party, it kind of just undercuts a lot of what we say to begin with. Because, for example, let's say, for argument's sake, you had a Japanese nationalist party, but then they had a white guy saying, "Oh, I want to cut all immigration." It doesn't matter how strong the language is. You just instinctively disbelieve, because you go, "Well, if you believed this way, you wouldn't have a single foreigner anywhere near your leadership." to begin with.
Yeah, I totally
I
agree
think-
with that. Yeah, I mean, I was just on about the messaging and the signals. You can say that seems to me deliberate. I totally agree with Mitch. That is, it's almost as if he's been placed there to kind of signal that, yeah, there's only so far this party can go. There's only so much we can do because the man at the top is a foreigner.
Is he gonna
Yeah.
deport himself? I mean, if he is saying that, then okay, maybe, but I don't think he is.
He's not saying that. He's not saying
Mhm.
Zia Yusuf is running reform like he ran his Velocity Black business, which is a big
Yeah.
scam operation.
I think that's a prostitution ring.
Well, yeah, I listen. I wouldn't say it was a prostitution ring, but I think it was definitely a
Well-
con. Let's put it that
Well,
way.
I mean, what I know is they were having parties for rich people where models were flown out for. What do we think these models were getting up to?
Well, yeah, I mean exactly. What? Listen, when there's rich people and they have cute girls,
Mhm.
what do you think's ever
Mhm.
happening? Come on, let's be honest. If I was a rich person, I might even be the same, but probably only up to a point. You know.
Speaking of women and the rich, what do people think of the allegation made by Happy Curse Plague Doctor in the chat?
What did he say?
Oh, I
Sorry,
don't
I
think
was sending someone a link.
I wouldn't be surprised if Nigel was on the client list. He says.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Look,
at the very least.
Guys, I'm going to tell you this, right? The Epstein, yes, he had 17-year-old girls, all right? And I think that's bad. I do. But let's be honest, back when I was a young man, you could have sex legally at 16, okay? So this is not children in that sense. But you know what? None of it is good.
Mhm.
It's not. None of it is good. And Farage is pointing out, as Morgoth said quite correctly, if you vote for me, I'm not a racist. I'm not going to be pro-Anglo-Celtic people. I'm just going to be a Mark II Tory pie, basically. That's what he's saying. All right? And he is. He's just saying, I'm going to be a Mark II Tory pie. And you can look at Richard Tice, and you can certainly look at Zia Yusuf, and you can see this is what they're saying. There is no point in replacing the so-called, in air quotes, conservative pie with Farage's reform, because they don't really want to reform anything. Farage has even said this. He wants to stop the real right wing getting power in Britain, and Farage has said this.
Mhm.
Over and over again through the years.
Yeah, many times.
I mean, there's a lot of them do this. Like Douglas Murray does this as well, and it's this kind of well, what they say is, oh, well, if you think you should be grateful for me because you've got no idea what would come after me.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, I want to get to that stage. I want
too.
that stage.
Yeah.
I mean, Evela Sunglasses says in the chat, can you ever see the membership turning on Farage? Could they get him out? No, I don't think they could.
No.
The membership is carefully sort of controlled via Hope Not Hate to make sure that anybody who's problematic gets booted. And I think Farage has just got a lock on the party. The party would just implode. If somehow that was facing a sort of leadership angle where Farage was threatened, I think he would just pull the plug on the entire party. That's he's done it before. So again, I just see it as a kind of sponge to soak up anger, resentment, fear, and energy on the British right.
I'm thinking
100% Morgoth.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's actually a chance that before the next election, because that's a few years away still, we might see Zaya just shuffle Nigel off to the side, and then
Well, I mean,
take control himself.
Thorium, I'm sure you've seen the like memes that I've seen where Zia Yusuf has a big sign saying, "I'm going to be Britain's first Muslim prime minister."
I haven't, but yeah.
Yeah, I've seen those. They're quite
Yeah.
common on X, you know.
Yeah.
And we're on X at the moment. But yeah, I think there's a great deal of truth to that. And just to prove that I am the most unusual of all British nationalists, I've just invited Clossington, who's an American. So Clossington, good evening, mate.
Afternoon, gents.
Hello.
I'm smoking about 7 pounds of cured bacon on this beautiful American afternoon. I heard sex trafficking rings, and automatically the American in me had to hop on.
Are we gonna get into the Epstein takes?
I really hope not. But
No,
hey, you guys brought it up, not
Clossington
me.
Clossington is a good American, by the way. He's one of my friends. But yeah, carry on, man.
I'd say the other thing that's bothered me about Zaya recently just is with the 7/7 attacks. He was just taking the BBC line of it's just nondescript people, or who knows why, they're just angry for some reason. Couldn't mention who or why, that it was like a Muslim terrorist attack.
And it's like, you know, lives were lost. You know, it was a terror attack. It wasn't like, you know, an avalanche or like a car crash or something.
Guys, let's not forget when one of the Muslim officers of the American army decided to open fire on his fellow soldiers. What was his name? The black.
Oh,
American.
yeah, at the base.
Yeah. He said that was workplace violence. It wasn't Muslim terrorism. It was workplace violence.
Oh, God.
Okay. All right.
Another fail from reform was a couple of weeks ago when you had the Glastonbury kind of thing went on. I mean, just like with the census data, just like with the sort of demographics. Again, you know, you had that black fella prancing around on the stage. One moment he's saying death to the IVF, and then the next he's kind of doing this thing where so you want your country back, you can't have that, blah blah blah. So again, you had like the choice was there, which and I knew which way it was going to go. I knew who and how they would react. To be fair to Farage, he played this one better. Farage did actually play this one better, but all of the rest of them, all of the Tories, all of the kind of Julia Hartley Brewer, Mother Goose bullshitters on LBC, all of the rest of them they picked up on the IDF line, and they didn't give a shit about the sort of the insult to the native British. They didn't care. They didn't. Now you'd think that would they'd have like a detector or something. You know, you'd think that when that was being processed in their brains, they would think, well, this looks bad. This if he's made two inflammatory statements here. One of them is an insult to the Israeli army. The other one is an insult to my own people, my own countrymen. Which am I going to decide? Which am I going to grandstand on? Which am I going to make a big fuss about? And all of them, except, to be fair, Farage, canny enough, he didn't say much, and then he made it about you getting your country back. And I think he did something. He tweeted out something like "vote reform if you want your country back," which is bullshit in and of itself because of his other statements. But at least he kind of leaned into that. At least he passed that test. All of the rest of them was just a total washout. They didn't care. They didn't give a shit. So, you've got John Bull sitting around in the Queen's Head watching a bit of Glasgow on a Saturday afternoon. And all of the people who are supposed to represent him are more concerned about the Israeli army than him. It's just not good enough. If you're going to claim and pretend that you represent me and my interests, that's just not good enough.
Yeah, what a surprise, Morgoth.
I have to ask, as a non-Brit, has Glastonbury historically been, I guess, politically charged in this way?
Definitely in recent history, because there's a couple of
it's basically lefty, but it's become even more lefty the longer time has gone on. Would that be fair, Hitman?
I'd say it's a hippie thing before.
It does look very aged in terms of its the people who actually attended.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same people. They haven't changed.
Corsington, think about Burning Man in America. It's kind of similar to that, I'd say.
Well, Burning Man is historically, it's very Silicon Valley sort of coded.
Woodstock be the best comparison.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit more of a how do you say, a legacy institution.
Yeah, that was a one-off, Mitch. But yeah, I'd say more like Burning Man is probably the closest American.
These are very. Because Glastonbury has been around since 1970. I think
they're very wealthy. The people who go to it these days, they are like our Silicon Valley type sort of.
Well, just to go an example of a couple of politically charged events in recent memory, I remember in 2016, because Glastonbury happened around the same time you had the Brexit vote, and I remember clips of young EU-loving millennials just crying their eyes out, and then Damon Albarn on the stage calling the whole country racist. And then I remember a year later,
I loved it so much. Honestly, I loved it so much. All those people crying was so good. It was you're all fucking wanks and you don't know what Britain is.
Yeah, and in 2017, the guy who runs Glastonbury invited Jeremy Corbyn on stage, and he gave this really wank speech where because I think Fidel Castro just died, so he gave a eulogy for Fidel Castro, and then
who was a lovely guy who used to shoot black people and all sorts of things. Yeah, absolutely, yeah, great bloke.
And then he also had to attack Trump. Build bridges, not walls, despite Glastonbury having a wall all around it. So okay.
If our nation had Glastonbury's border security, no one would be getting in.
Well, I think it was in 2019. I got into a hell of a shitstorm because of Glastonbury, because they had Stormzy on, who was I don't know what you call it. It was like this drill rap, is it?
Yeah.
And I did a 6-minute video on YouTube, which I called "Stormzy is a talentless tool of the establishment." And it didn't. The weird thing is, it was just one of me kind of off the cuff rants. It didn't last very long, and it didn't even do that very well. And I think I went to work and I came back and it had 40,000 views, which was just. And I was thinking, and the line on the back end of YouTube was just going through the roof. And I thought, oh shit, what's happening here? And all hell began to break loose. There was reply videos. And there was people on Twitter. I think shitlib Twitter had picked it up. But then I'd mentioned in the video how all of the establishment was fawning and was on Stormzy's side. And I mentioned Morrissey is genuinely anti-establishment, because at that time, around that era, Morrissey had said a bunch of things about terrorist attacks, the Manchester Arena and things. He was like really based. And Morrissey, somehow, my video ended up on the official Morrissey website. I like posted there as a main feature, and this just went wild. So not for the first time or the last, as it turns out, I had all these like lefties and shit libs trying to hunt me down, trying to dox me, trying to get me channel removed and everything. And Billy Bragg, the kind of fake champagne socialist,
he was a British soldier and left. He was a British soldier, but left very early.
Well, and he's famous because he was from Barking and Dagenham. He campaigned against the BNP, and then he went like he when the demographics changed, he bought like a big coastline house in Dorset or something like that. And he ended up in a Twitter storm with more or less begging Morrissey, like as an artist to an artist, to take my racist rant off his website because it was encouraging and everything. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen at all. And then Billy Bragg wrote an article in the Independent about how Morrissey had become a white nationalist and he was platforming white nationalist content and everything. And it just went on and on and on. And I actually did a couple of sort of reply videos. One of them I called the Good, the Bragg, and the Stormzy, and it was this was, I think, like, just as we were entering in like peak woke retardation. But back in the day, before that, Glastonbury, when I was a kid, when I was a young lad, in say 97 and that. It was always, I remember there was one year where it rained and everybody got covered in mud. And I think the difference is, back in the day, like the culture just wasn't as political. Like, yeah, like technically all of the people who are there in like 1997, they would have been like lefty shit libs. But I think because the state of the country, which people complained about at the time, just was nowhere near the state that it's in now. The nothing was as politicized. Immigration wasn't even much of an issue in 1997. In 1997, we were like 90% white country. That's that, all in my lifetime, I've seen these changes.
That was just before Tony Blair.
Yeah, it was that. Yeah, it was in the year that Blair, there was on that summer. I think Blair got elected early in the summer, and then there was the famous Glastonbury thing. A Britpop was at its peak. You know, when the Spice Girls and Oasis were in the charts, we were like a 90% white British country.
Never a fan of Oasis, of course.
All right, but the point is, in the cultural memory of the country, it's like it's just not long. It's just not long at all. No. The situation that we've got now has been so unbelievably fast. You know, I can remember conversations that I had as a grown man in pubs before this happened. It's insane.
Totally agree. Look, where I might slightly disagree with you, Morgoth, is like I do hate and detest the Tory Party. I absolutely do. But I also hate and detest the Labour Party, and particularly that vile traitor Tony Blair, who led Britain into the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and was going to rub our noses in diversity. I think these two groups are equally bad. And as we've been talking about considerably this evening, I don't think Nigel Farage is much better, to be honest. We need a totally new direction from all these people. We just do.
I'd actually do it. I think the Tories are worse. I think that objectively, I know it's tempting to say,
well, they're bigger liars. They're bigger liars because Labour doesn't pretend to be pro-British, really.
Yeah,
So the Tories are bigger liars. I'll give you that, but that's about it, really.
but they've also just objectively done more damage to the country. There's like how what is the criteria for sort of saying who is the worst? Because if it's on immigration, if it's on immigration, the Tories are worse. If it's
Yeah,
on
but
hate speech laws and censorship, the Tories are worse. If it's on lying and stabbing us in the back, the Tories are worse.
yeah. And not the worst one's Boris, because like there are plenty of people near me who still, if Boris were to come back as leader of the Tories, you imagine Tories immediately like 10-15% boost in the polls.
Let's get Brexit done, i.e., let's totally con that we're going to do Brexit. Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
So
it's
this.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, that's just why I hate Boris more than I hate Starmer.
I was going to ask, as a non-Brit, in the sort of Trump base, there's a sort of political realignment where there's a very up-and-coming faction of isolationist and anti-war, like Republicans within the Republican base. Is anything like that starting to emerge within the Tories, or at least the Tory base? Or are they just as sort of war-hungry, Churchillite interventionists as usual?
Clossington, the Tories want to start a war with Russia that we will lose. Like, we will absolutely lose a war with Russia, but they want to start one.
Yeah, you had Farage last
and Labour are no bad. They also want to start a war with Russia that we will lose. Britain has no air defenses whatsoever, but we should start a war with Russia, who can land missiles on us that we cannot shoot down.
Yeah, the thing about
Labour and the Conservatives, so-called Tories, are exactly the same in that respect. They want us to start a war with a nation that is vastly bigger than us and that has vastly more nuclear weapons that we will lose. But somehow that's a good thing because Ukraine is a good country. Even though prior to 2022, Ukraine was mostly known for three things. It was known as easily the most corrupt country in Europe. It was known as a center to get young girls for the sex trade that, people like, what's his name, that didn't do anything wrong, would use in America. And also it was known as the main place where you could go and buy a baby if you were a gay couple or a lesbian couple. That's what Ukraine was known for. But apparently now Ukraine is like the most democratic place in the whole of Europe. And it's we should all die for its ex-comedian leader of Ukraine, whose most famous act was playing a piano with his dick.
Right,
But,
I will say, Farage last year, he was a lot more skeptical about Ukraine stuff. Now he's just like full on going, "Oh, well, Ukraine should join NATO." Like, to me, he's mostly changed his tune on it.
Amazing. Maybe Zia told him to.
But ING, didn't you know that Russia, they've got smaller GDP than Italy? They're nothing.
Yeah. Except they've got more armaments factories than Britain had 25 or 30 years ago. But yeah, all right. Okay.
You were asking about the base though more, right, Closington? Well, Closington?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
I was more curious if there was a substantial anti-war faction developing.
Say the pro-war faction generally isn't as hardcore as among just normal people. It's not as hardcore as you get in the American pro-war, but the sort of isolationist like stuff is, I'd say, it's pretty, it's quite muted still. the general normie is still unthinkingly just sort of says, yes, support Ukraine. But they're not thinking about it.
And
the
also
breakdown is mostly
remember
like
in Britain, the propaganda in favor of Ukraine is overwhelming. It really is. It's nonsense, but it's overwhelming.
there's like support for Ukraine is largely like an age demographic question here. But I really don't know what the field looks like in the UK.
It looks not good crossing the
Yeah.
let me
I-
tell you.
I would say for people below the age of 35, it's all about Israel versus Palestine. For people above, I don't know, the age of 50, it's all about Ukraine. Like, anecdotally, like, boomers are very concerned about Russia. They're still into that Cold War mindset. Whereas people of my generation, they're all just crapping the bed over Gaza and Iran and so on.
Well, I think
Yeah.
the problem with the whole perspective on Ukraine, I mean, I've touched on this with Melon and others on the streams I'm doing on my channel, Millennial Culture, but in a lot of shooter games like Call of Duty, we've sort of been weaponized to hate Russia, and I think that's been in our culture for quite a while, especially in fact, quite ironically, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I'd argue the demonization of Russia and popular culture has actually accelerated, and more so than it was even when they were nominally supposed to be our enemy during the Cold War. So funny how that works, isn't it?
I don't really see much in terms of the kind of Middle East forever wars. There's there's not much interest or sort of talk about that really among with Iran recently, for example, well, we seem to have taken a back seat. I kind of get the impression that Britain has been sort of given a leading role with the rest of the Europeans in Ukraine, and America wants to go it alone on like the Far East, which is, to be fair, it's far away from Europe, and the Middle East because of their own special interests there. And it tends to, in Britain, it tends to be more about Ukraine than the Middle East in terms of forever wars. But the thing is, regardless of how people sort of signal on social media, the conscription numbers are just useless. Like, nobody actually wants to join the army and go and fight. So it doesn't really matter how you virtue signal your allegiance to one thing or another. In reality, like, just almost nobody's joining the military because the morale of the country as a whole is just completely in the toilet. There's not really any kind of there's not really any kind of patriotic narrative in Britain, in a way where you obviously, I think you can do that with Trump. I think he's struggling with this, to be honest. I think it's at odds with what MAGA want, and it's confused, as we saw with the Iran thing, where it was like we didn't vote for this, we voted for America first, and all of that. But that's you still got a bit of sort of patriotic momentum there. In Britain, we've got nothing like that whatsoever. It's just a void. It's just, and this is why things hit harder in Britain, because when you see, for example, what we were discussing earlier, this asylum seeker sort of sexually abuses nobody wanted that, and there's this kind of helplessness because there's no longer we're no longer told that diversity is our strength. For example, we're no longer told about how enriching it is or how great the food is, or there's not really any kind of justification. It's not folded into a wider narrative or story so that people can conceptualize it. And instead, it's more like just this brute force. It's more like you're getting it whether you want it or not. And this has this severe demoralizing effect on the whole country when it comes to something like enthusiasm for foreign wars and adventurism, because you've just had the guts of the nation ripped out by the government pissing in your face. You're just treated like shit. So there's no energy to go and fight and do anything for any reason. Except, in the news, they'll make a big song and dance about how we're going to have a war with Russia, but I don't think anybody even seriously believes it.
I think
Like,
also,
as far-
sorry, I was going to say, I think also from talking about an isolationist perspective, we're not starting anything. No, we're not America. So us being isolationist doesn't mean so much. Whereas, like Morgoth said earlier, we portray ourselves as the greatest ally. And I think that's right. Any on-paper ally of us, we will do anything for. Israel needs fighter jets; they've got them. So,
Well, you're talking about the government, Terry.
yeah,
not
I know.
people.
That's what I mean.
I was going to say that I think there is an enormous amount of untapped patriotism in Britain, but are you really going to fight for Sakastama, to Tier Care? Are you really going to go and fight for some of the worst regimes around the world? Why would you? I mean, I'm old enough to remember the Falklands War, right? I was waiting to join the British Army when the Falklands War broke out. I was a 17-year-old, and my dad would not give me permission to join, which you can if you're 17, if your parents do, but my dad wouldn't. And so I remember this war, watching it on TV, and the Royal Navy doing great things, and the Royal Marines and the Paras doing great things, and the Fleet Air Arm doing great things. And when the ships came home, like, Portsmouth was a sea, a literal sea. Every side of Portsmouth was a sea of Union Jacks, Union flags, and white ensigns, and all that. When HMS Hermes came home, and also when HMS Invincible came home, the other carrier, and also other ships. And I remember that, and it was the proudest time I was ever a Brit, because, we'd gone and fought this war on our own, that we'd won. And for British reasons, nothing to do with anybody else. The EU didn't like it. The Americans really originally didn't like it. But we just went and did it anyway. And that was great. But today, I think there's still that same patriotism in Britain. Yeah. But are you really going to go and fight for two-tier care? Who like lets rapists out of jail immediately, and even immigrant murderers out of jail immediately. But if you do a nasty tweet, you'll get 3 years. Who can be patriotic about that? What is there to be patriotic about? And Care keeps coming out with this shit like, oh, we're going to do conscription. You can't do conscription in Britain because the British Army is so small that we don't even have enough NCOs to train conscripts. Supposedly in 1914, the German Kaiser said Britain has a contemptible little army. The British Army in 1914, including all its reserves, but not including all the Empire troops, was about 230,000 strong. These days, it's 70,000 strong. It is tiny. It would die in Ukraine in about 3 months. Even if it was winning, it would be dead in 3 months in Ukraine. We had no air defenses. The Royal Navy, in the Falklands War, the Royal Navy sent about, had 70 or so destroyers and frigates. Today, the Royal Navy has, I think, I'm not sure if it's 14 or 12. It's certainly not more than 14. The Royal Navy has been destroyed by the British government.
Well, something I wanted to add to that, Duke, what you were saying before about, the glory winning the Falklands War. It's interesting because it reminds me there's a famous Napoleon quote where he's talking about the Battle of Fontenoy, which was a battle during the War of Austrian Succession where the French defeated the Brits, Austrians, and the Dutch in Belgium. And despite the reign of Louis XV being a bit of a disaster, that was like the one silver lining. He won this great victory. And Napoleon said, that victory at Fontenoy added like another 50 years of life to the Ancien regime. And looking at British military history recently, the Falklands War was really our last great victory. And so I've had to wonder if that glory's been enough to kind of keep our moribund government going all this time, and the failure to win any kind of other victories has sort of contributed to the fact people aren't really going to take it anymore, because why support something which is just going to keep losing and is going to keep causing disasters?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. The British Army, alongside the American military, lost in Afghanistan, just like we lost in Iraq. We didn't win those wars, guys.
So, as an American, I have two different points for you. The first is that America's sort of center right has a professional sort of generational military class that is sort of Scots-Irish, old American that lives in like Northern Virginia. They don't do anything occupationally except warfare and military contracting. While the sort of center right is like the sort of center right Democrats are almost entirely these sort of neocons who do apologetics for interventionism against the sort of will of the base. And our military is very, very well funded, like even now. Meanwhile, the British Navy, if I remember correctly, its main sort of active assets are just four nuclear submarines that take precedence over everything, while all the other assets kind of languish and die off. Like, you guys don't even have enough like airplanes to fully stock an aircraft carrier. Like, do you guys have anything approximating like a generational military cast that we have here?
Used to have Glossington, we used to have, but that died out in the 1990s or early 2000s for sure. It's just dead. The senior officers, like your generals and admirals and air marshals in the British forces these days, are they're politicians and they're absolute total globalists, neocons, as you would say, and traitors to Britain entirely, all of them, no exception.
This is why I started the stream having a rant about these kind of Tories who hijack the language of when we did have military presence and like a proud military tradition, so that kind of lingers in the cultural memory of British people. And so when the Tories like sneakily slip in the Afghan army, or like 25,000 or 200,000 Afghans, they instead of just saying, like, we're just backstabbing traitors, and all of these people are going to molest all of the English girls and that you're going to have to pay for them forever, instead of just cutting straight to that, they adopt the language of the military tradition. And that's what makes me just sick to my stomach. And it's particularly, you will see that on like the Tory sort of right more, because historically they were more interested in empire and that kind of thing. So you have all of these kind of lingering memories within the country still as it dies, as they kill it, but they'll still adopt that language and speak about, oh, well, we you know, they were helping our brave soldiers in Afghanistan and we are loyal to our allies and all the rest of it, as if to kind of sort of resuscitate a corpse which they murdered and then parade it around as if to say, this is your patriotism. It's your patriotic duty to have a house of 8 Afghanis in a council house who are going to
100%
your daughter who goes to school. And it's so deceptive and dystonic. It makes me sick. I despise these people.
100%, mate. 100%. I remember in the Anglo-Boer War at one stage, the South African Boer guys, like the Afrikaners, they had surrounded this little English fort and they called on them to surrender. And there was a Northumbrian soldier in there, and he said, I was a miner and I've been in bigger holes than this shit. And they refused to surrender and they held out until a British relief force came out. But
was that the relief of Maith King, I presume?
No. It was in Northern Natal. But yeah, you know, there is genuine British military history, and as Morgoth was saying, there's playing on the memory of it, which is what they are doing with these Afghans. You know what? If someone's an ex-British serviceman and they're a genuine ex-British serviceman, as far as I'm concerned, I'm liable to be their friend and I will try and help them out. But I don't give a shit about Afghans. I'm sorry, I just don't. You know, there's, as I said much earlier in the stream, go around any British city or large town and you will find homeless British veterans. Well, how about we give these people homes before we do Afghans? That's my view.
I mean, the one time, just in terms of the base, one of the one time that we get representation in adverts, and I think this is the same in America, is on the dodgy box that we've got. You know, if you put YouTube on, for some reason I don't get it on the PC. But if you, I think it's because if you you're not logged in on YouTube and you get different ads and whatnot. I don't know how it all works, but basically you'll see ads on a normie YouTube account. You will see ads for like recruitment ads, and they're all sort of directed. There's 4 that I remember, and 3 of them are. There's one who sounds like he speaks like me. He's from the Northeast, and not just from the Northeast, but above the Tyne. There's another one who seems like he's from a bit further south, maybe Sunderland. There's another one who's Scouse. And then there's a woman, and she's from the Northeast as well. And then there's like a black fella, a black lad, and he sounds like he's from London. And so you can see that the army recruitment sort of ads, out of the 4 or whatever it is, the 4 or 5 examples, they've got like working class white northern lads. You've got like a kind of token female who also happens to be northern, and then you've got like a token black man from down around London somewhere. So this is the cannon fodder. This is the target their target demographics to send off to whatever it is they've got up their sleeve next. Whatever, this is who we want to fight for England. And I mean, the 3 white lads have got absolutely nothing to trust the government for, because they're just shut on. They've been robbed of their country. And the black lad, he's been told that the society's inherently racist. So there's no reason for him to stand up for it, because Britain is a racist imperialist empire or it was, and it's still institutionally racist. And the police will taser him and pin him to the ground and put him in jail for nothing. And then so what you're left with is like a white woman. And even then, like the justification that she has to join the army is that she can play football or something. So basically, the British Army will be made up of white northern women who want to play football. Like that's the target demographic. That's what they're going to get.
And they're going to be sent off to Ukraine to, fight, Ivan, who's 6'6" and built like a brick shithouse. I'm sure who's going to win that.
If it makes you feel any better, YouTube ads are very regional specific, and recently I've gotten a bunch of like sort of Spanish speaking ads and a few ads that have like Indians in them, and I'm in Appalachia right now. Like they didn't exist like 5 years ago with the Indians.
Taste of what's to come then.
Yeah, like we didn't have any of them like 5 years ago.
Guys, I'll tell you, like when I was a 18-year-old trainee soldier, I was getting shown how to fire an 84mm Carl Gustav anti-tank weapon, right? And the bloke showing me how to do this was a Northumberland Fusilier, and he had his budgie, which is a little crest on his beret. And he says to me, "Don't be afeard of the weapon, son. Don't be afeard of the weapon." In an accent like Morgoth's. But I can't do accents. But you know what? Back in the day, we had a damn good armed forces. The Royal Navy, the Royal Marines, the British Army, and even the RAF were pretty fucking good back in the day. But they've been destroyed, and they've been destroyed by the British government. Aubrey budgies are what we call little red and white crests in the British Army, not the little Australian birds you're thinking of. But anyway, whatever. But yeah, but back in the day, we really did have a good armed forces that was pretty fucking brave and very well disciplined. They could beat most people. But the people who've destroyed it are the British government, two-tier care, and also all the fucking so-called conservatives as well. And, of course, the vile traitor Blair. But,
I mean, one of my earliest memories, I could get corrected by the Navy bros here, but I wonder if it was just before the Falklands War was kicking off, and I was taken by an auntie and an uncle down to the River Tyne, and was it HMS Fearless? I think it was.
Yeah, she was an amphibious cruiser. She was one of the landing ships.
Yeah, it was that one, and we were allowed to go down to, I think it was North Shields or somewhere, and we were allowed to go on. And I was. This is really one of my earliest memories. So, I'm not that old, but and we went on, and we were allowed to go like walk around on the boat. And I remember because it was the first time that I'd ever seen a French stick bread, and you got the impression that if you are like surfing on the Royal Navy, you would get like better food than what you would see in Normie Land, which I actually think was probably true as well. I'd never seen a French stick. At that time, I'd never seen a French stick before. But it played into a wider thing of the era, and throughout the 80s, that the British Army was not like big and it wasn't everywhere anymore. But it was more that it was like sort of compacted, and it was small, and it was really tough. You had like Harrier jump jets, and you had like a small fleet, a Navy fleet, but it could really pack a punch.
Wasn't that small? It wasn't that small, Morgoth.
All right.
In 1982, we still had 70 destroyers and frigates. That was pretty big. We got like somewhere between 12 and 14.
I think it's about 12, yeah.
Yeah. But we had 70
Oh,
back
alright.
then.
All right. So anyway, and then you had like the British sort of army, which was like super trained and could take care of anything. And then the sort of the cherry on the cake. My perception was that the SAS, and they were like the most elite of the elite, and they could just take anybody out. And so you had this kind of post-imperial sort of way to be proud in your armed forces, which wasn't that they were this world-conquering force, but that they were kind of a really tough nut to crack and very professional. And that's gone now as well.
Morgoth, when I joined the army in 1983, right, in my battalion, there were guys who'd served in Belize in Central America. There were quite a lot of guys who'd served in Hong Kong. There were guys who'd served in Borneo. Back when I joined, there was still this thing that, join the armed forces and see the world. Completely gone now. Just completely gone.
Well, why would you need to join the army to see the world when the world has come to us?
Well, yeah, I kind of, I want to chuck them all out, but I'm quite happy to go and see them in their own natural habitat, shall we say. But I mean, I'm not the guy to ask, because I fucked off to South Africa after I did 3 years in the British Army. I thought, fuck this. They were going to send my battalion to Germany, and I had no interest in going to Germany. So I thought, okay. So I fucked off to South Africa and joined their army. But that was just me. I'm not average. So.
All right, so I'm going to get going. All the best, lads.
Morgoth, you are always more than welcome on this channel. And
all right.
Thank you so much for joining us, mate. Go well.
Right,
and
cheers.
I'll put, what do you want?
Just the Substack will do. Substack or the YouTube will do.
Yeah, I'll put your Substack and the YouTube under here, mate.
Hey,
Thank you very much.
See you later, lads. Good night.
Go well.
See ya.
All right, gents. We've been going way over 2 hours. Any final thoughts from Tharium?
Yeah, one thing came up. Last time I was on, I mentioned the Shield guys. That's all collapsed because the guy who started it, biker guy, he goes and puts out this video of him with this bunch of Muslim guys who he said he's signing up for it, and everyone's just thinking, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah, it's done.
Imagine you're some girl who's being followed by these Muslims. You call them up, and then some new guy comes up and goes, "Salam alaikum, I'm your escort home."
Yeah.
And then people looked
Totally.
into who the Muslim guy actually was. He's some guy who's supported white genocide in South Africa and stuff. So it's just, what the hell? And then look into the Shield, and then they find out that there's some sort of charity scam going on with them, where they're sort of falsely registering themselves, and it's just like, oh. So that's all collapsed.
Yep, not surprised. We seem to have lost Mitch.
Yeah.
Hitman, any final thoughts?
Well, all I have to say is, a bit of a shit show of a week. A lot happened, and I hope things get better, but I think they're going to get worse.
I think they're going to get worse before they get better, but they will get better.
There was a in the Lake District, they're protesting the mosque being built there as well today.
Yeah.
So, anger's rising.
Yep, fair enough. Clossington, any final thoughts?
So, as far as my perspective goes, give me 1 second. Things don't look too good in the Anglosphere, all things considered. However, I do have to highly recommend Admiral Vernon's recipe for grog. It served me very well this afternoon. In terms of, I guess, what we've been discussing, the whole Ukrainian war has proven to be something of a boondoggle for the entire British economy, and I hope to see a more vigorous anti-war, anti-interventionist grassroots organization form in the UK and throughout the Anglosphere. I'm very privileged to have been platformed on this stream. Thank you very much, Iron Duke, and cheers to all of you guys.
All I would say, Clossington, is if you want to support a British group, support Restore Britain, which is Rupert Lowe's organisation. Support that, Clossington. That's the best that there is at the moment, to be honest. It ain't Nigel Farage, let me tell you. We got 363 people watching us at the moment.
Oh, wow.
And at one stage, we had over 400, but that was mostly thanks to Morgoth. But yeah, listen, I'm a big British patriot, and I'd like to see the British Armed Forces be back to the position they were in the 80s, where they were feared by at least smaller militaries. We're a long way from that now, but you've got to destroy two-tier care. You've got to destroy the Conservative Party. I think you've probably also got to destroy Nigel Farage, to be honest. But we'll see.
Do you have any other policy prescriptions in terms of restoring said organizations?
Look, at the moment, the nearest I can find, Clossington, is Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain. These guys seem to be pretty good. Everybody who I like, from Morgoth to people like Sargon, like Restore Britain. And I think they're the closest we have at the moment. Will it work? I just don't know. I'm supporting them. I paid my 20 quid a year. And I never did that for reform because I never totally trusted Nigel Farage. And I certainly wouldn't trust Zia Youssef so far as I could throw him with the little finger of my left hand. But that's because I'm a racist, no doubt.
I think reform had a chance once we got Zia out, but then that was all dashed. That was all dashed very quickly.
Yeah, it was. He came back even more quickly than he was chucked out. Surprising, that, isn't it?
Well, I mean, there are some out there who say we shouldn't even be politically organising because we're all retards, apparently.
Yeah, including probably Nigel Farage. And like I said, I think I didn't want to think it. I denied it for a long time. But I think Nigel Farage is containment. I really do.
I was coping for a while to start with, when he was saying all this stupid stuff, because it's like, well, Rupert's in the party, right? So I was thinking, well, Rupert's clearly saying the quiet part out loud. But then once he gets kicked out, it's like, oh, never mind.
Yeah, I was going to vote for reform at the next general election. I very much doubt if I will right now, because I want Britain to be a basically Anglo-Celtic nation, not a Sri Lankan Muslim nation. And if that makes me a racist, then I guess I'm a racist. But, whatever. All right, gents, we've gone way over our 2 hours. And I am going to, first of all, read our Entropy Super Chats. And we have one from Gerin, who sends us $5 and just says hello. Gerin, you regularly support the channel. Thank you very much, sir. Most kind of you. And it will just go on to paying my bills for running this channel, basically. And other than that, I'm going to play us out with a tune. Assuming I can do so, I shall try. Okay. Now what am I supposed to do? No, I don't want to do that. Oh, for fuck's sake, I hate Firefox sometimes. Sorry, guys, I'm boomering this shit at the moment. Yes, you can allow them. All right, thank you. Yes, okay, allow. Okay, why is this so complicated?
I can imagine all of the Australian like cryptids trying to infiltrate your computer right now.
Yeah, it's something like that. It's something like that.
It's probably more likely with the 77th Brigade, knowing what we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's more likely that, actually, to be honest. The shiny asses of the 77th Brigade, who are probably a few dozen British soldiers, probably mostly women and gay people.
Well, Ben Wallace, who did
and
the...
Ben Wallace.
He was the head of it, wasn't he?
Oh, that wouldn't surprise me.
I think he was the head of it. And he was the one, of course, who set up the whole Afghan thing. Brilliant.
That explains a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it does kind of, yeah. It does. Let me try
I can just imagine that the Rothschilds paid the Five Eyes to like send one particular satellite just to like zap your particular PC at this particular opportunity.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
You had Morgoth on, so they had to shut you down.
It probably is true, yeah. I see, normally I run this stream from a different browser, and it's not working this evening at all, which is partly because Mozilla is just fucking stupid. And I only use Mozilla because it doesn't allow YouTube ads. And I'll do anything to stop YouTube ads, basically.
Have you tried Brave? Brave's
I
another good
haven't.
option for that.
Yeah, no, I will check it out, but I haven't yet. But yeah, I probably should. All right, let me see. I'll try once more. If this doesn't work, I'll give up. Select Windows 3. Yes. Okay. Now. All right. Fuck this. I'm not doing it anymore. All right, guys. I was going to.
Well,
Oh no, no!
Well, farewell,
time
everyone,
is
I
it?
guess.
Like, what time is it in Aussie time? It has
I-
to be like 4 in the morning or something like that.
No, usually when he starts these streams, it's about 6:30 in the morning for him. So it's probably like 9:30 now, I imagine.
Jeez, that's pretty awful.
Yeah, he's a bit of a night owl, Iron Duke. He'll probably go to bed after this.
Yeah, like I platformed him on my my channel a little while back, and it was some ungodly hour.
Yeah.
For,
I
for
remember
him.
that he said it was like 4 in the morning, I think, when you finished. So
Yeah, Australian streamers seem to have it really tough on their time zones. Are we still live?
yeah, we are.
Yes, we are. In term,
Yeah.
In terms of God, this is a little bit of a mess, but
It's a bit scattered.
it is a bit scattered.
I mean, Iron Duke might not even realize he's gone. He might be playing the song just for himself.
Oh God, I do remember in terms of Aussies. Oh, there he is.
Yep, sorry about that, gents. I don't know what happened. But anyway, I was trying to play us a song from, a tune from Patriotic Archive. Friend of the channel, couldn't do it, but never mind. Thank you very much to our guests this evening. Obviously, Morgoth, Tharium, Mitch, Hitman, and also Charlemagne. I will put links in the description to everyone's stuff. And in the meantime, don't let the bastards grind you down. We will see you on Wednesday for our history stream, people. Please come and join. Do like the stream and subscribe for more content.
Go well, everyone.